Good morning, my name is Alessio, and today I'm here to talk about one of the largest challenges that I have faced since moving back from industry into academia. This is a project which I'm very fond of, and I believe, also talking to many, that this is something that could be a game changer. I had a very successful career in avian research, so living was very hard. But I joined the university because I had an ideal, and that was to create the next best software engineers. People, students, professionals that love to create things, not just because it's a job, but because they thoroughly enjoy it. So coming from industry, the impact with the academic world is very, very hard, and these hardships come with different aspects. For example, expectation of academic goals versus education goals, or business goals versus education goals, and politics in general. And the biggest question is, do intents actually change into actions? As we know, we're now looking at the trend of education as a service or as a commodity. We can imagine this water tap that we open and education just springs out of it, with most of the time requiring a hefty payment to turn it on. This has, of course, moved business models and education models towards specific avenues, with online learning being the simplest way to scale the education business. Unfortunately, when we scale and when we start moving everything online, we tend to create more and more distance. After all, the internet was invented to connect distant people and allow them to interact with the rest of the world. Unfortunately, this method has removed a lot of the human factor, meaning that it is now difficult for students to relate to their teachers, and at the same time, educators are now required to look at students as customers, removing individuality more and more. And this is also as a personal experience. When sometimes I find really excellent students that I would like to invest my own time on, I am blocked by the bureaucratic machine because we are required to conform to the rules. We can't treat students differently, and most of the time, when that happens, it becomes such a big burden that as educators, we simply give up. We first want to point out the generic assumption, and that is, we're all the same. Unfortunately, that is not true, and as literature, but also the media have noticed, that is the case. Australian schooling has undergone major changes over the last decade, mainly through national policy reforms agreed by federal and state governments, and these include an Australian curriculum, standardized national assessments in literacy and numeracy, national reporting on schools through the My School website, professional standards for teachers and principals, and a universally accessible year of preschool. So, what can we do? Well, the fact is, everyone is different, and everybody learns at a different speed. Therefore, one model does not fit all. Learning needs to be tailored to each individual if we really want to maximize our outcomes. So, this is our theory. There exists a state of mind where a person is fully engaged and his learning outcome is maximized. This state of mind exists in the area where the person is performing certain tasks with increased difficulty, where the task is neither too easy, causing the boredom, nor it is too difficult, ending in frustration for the player. So this state is called flow. It's a psychological theory, and it's normally used in video games AI to keep the player interested in keep playing the game. Imagine, for example, that you are playing a computer game, like a fighting game, and you easily win against your opponent, the computer opponent. You will lose interest and stop playing because you're bored. And the same goes in the opposite way. If it is too difficult, instead, you will be frustrated and drop out. So video games have been using this technique in order to keep the player happy and wanting to play more. And this is basically identified inside the graph, where we have the skill on the X and the challenge on the Y, making that the difficulty. So we have used this theory and applied it into education because everyone is different. So if we take that concept, we can start asking, can we assess everybody at the same way? So we have used this theory and applied it to education. Everyone is different. So if we take the concept and we can start asking, can we assess everybody the same way? The concept is simple. Students are not all the same. So we created an environment where all students learn and their understanding is very efficient. Some are slower, some are faster understanding. This is why each student faces different challenges with a difficulty level adjusted for them. So we tested our assumption. We created a web application where we would teach people about the modular operator. Then we would test their understanding by asking them mathematical questions of different difficulty. So we had two groups. One using the DDA, the dynamic difficulty adjustment, and one using just a standard model. Every question had a difficulty level. In the standard model, you will be asked questions at random difficulty, as it happens in real life, because that's what we do. In the DDA instead, group will start from level 0 up to level 5. Answering correctly will gain you half a level, so going up in difficulty. Answering it incorrectly instead, you will lose 1/4 of a level. And that's because we did not want to create a punishment model. We thought that that was not the right way of going into it. And the results were quite interesting. The DDA group achieved an overall 34% better score than the standard group. This is based on time to answer and overall maximum level reached. So this is very, very encouraging. And we were very happy because we were on the right track. So now this is how we apply this in the real educational environment. We apply it to capstone problem, to the professional preparation. Capstone projects are about showcasing capabilities, both academically and industry-wise, and they should be some of the most important units, as they don't only showcase the students, but also the capability of the university. In the recent years, capstone students have failed to showcase quality due to a number of reasons, most notably the lack of professional development, under-engaged students, and poor teamwork and communication skills. So we have created our own intervention by using the DDA. We designed a platform from scratch called Larry, and this will allow students to develop professional skills towards management and delivery, real-time work skills, and self-assessment knowledge, gain recognized certifications, and will also enhance the portfolio. This was one of the key things that we wanted to do, to try and enhance the current work. So this is our intervention map. This is what we really wanted to achieve. This map outlines the basic mapping with the dynamic content and difficulty adjustment being the key aspects. So we start at the beginning with the need for professional skills. Based on that, we go and dynamically provide resources which are meaningful to the student. So that each student might take different paths, so they may need different things to work on. So once they receive the content, then they all get individually assessed. The assessment is basically, of course, on the ILOs for that specific unit. And in our case, it's of course knowledge, skills, and teamwork. So we provide feedback straight away, and then if they need improvement, they will go back into the system, or maybe it's just accepted and they can go and collect their reward. So if they need to improve, perhaps it was too difficult. So the difficulty adjustment will now recreate more content, which is maybe at an easier level for that student, so that they can basically go forward and redo the path. And this is simply because we have different students. So in reality, this is what it may actually look like. So we have a student that starts at the beginning. They choose a role. So in capstone, we may have designer roles, team leader role, document role, software development role, and then they choose a role. The system will then generate the optimal learning path for that specific person. Then they will complete each module to reach that target. And the target is really dependent on what they wanted to achieve. Perhaps a credit, perhaps a high distinction, or even higher, to get a professional certificate. And here, this is why we created this. We want the students to feel motivated and to try and achieve more and be recognized for this. So it's hard for students to know where they're at. This is a problem that we always found. How do you know if the student is giving in their max? Perhaps if we have the next Albert Einstein, but we don't nurture him enough, he just becomes another John Doe. So we need to make sure that the student is motivated to achieve more. And this is where we have the level with the difficulty. This is where the flow graph comes back into place. People will get challenges, tasks, according to the difficulty. And if the difficulty is too much, then it will go down to the to the next bottom one and keep on increasing and increasing. So this is where we wanted to really have that distinctive difficulty adjustment to take place. We want every student to have content to be created dynamically. I know, I understand this is not an easy thing to do, especially when we go maybe into literacy. But that's why we start in computer science, because in computer science, our content is a lot easier to create. We can more easily create content dynamically. So if we look, we need to make sure that all our ILOs are connected to tasks. So we have macro tasks, of course, and this is because when we started creating this, we needed to make sure of one thing, that this will respect the full university principle of assessment theory, of teaching methodology, teaching theory, assessment theory. So we have fully respected this. We have made sure that, for example, we choose a good practical model. And in our case, as I explained before, we are very big fans of the music model, because the music model is incredible at creating defined targets and objectives. And it makes it easier. It makes it very simple for a student to follow that path. And that path is basically represented in the micro tasks. We want students that they do a micro task, then they get assessed straight away, they get feedback, and then they can go on to the next task. More difficult or less difficult, depending on how they're going. And they can basically continue for infinite amount of time, or within the trimester, of course, to reach higher levels and to stay in that plateau. And we actually put it together with the soil taxonomy, and we wanted to make sure that these were fully respected again. So a pass, there must be tasks which follow simple procedures, for example. So this is where we start applying the rubric to the tasks, so that the content generated is essentially what is required to achieve that grade. Pass, credit, of course, which means describe problems and perform zero skills. Distinction is applied knowledge, and high distinction is where you can formulate new scenarios and manage teams, which is, of course, these are basic skills that are all around capstone projects in software development. To do that, we actually created our own content management system. You can think about this as Coursera meets FutureLearn. There were things that we liked about FutureLearn, things that we didn't like, so we actually went and created our own to make sure that it would work with our DDA system. So we have our interventions with selective walks. Selective walks is basically you can choose a path and then that gets dynamically adjusted. And within that, you have the goals management, which is extremely important. Goals management is part of goal theory, and we have found in interventions, especially in psychology, they are extremely important. They are the most important part. If you don't have a clear goal, it will be really hard to achieve that. And of course, we want to also know the user behavior. Here we have a mapping of what could be one module, one full intervention, from module 1 to the last module, to basically become your goal. Your front-end developer, perhaps, a back-end developer, maybe a designer. We have the roles, we have the tasks, and these are all of different difficulty. But going through this, you should then be able to become into your role. And one thing which was also very important, apart from the goal theory, is the immediate feedback for assessment. We have this with OnTrack, which is used within the School of IT. When we have a task, we must be able to give feedback straight away. And this is also because we have this huge problem as educators at finding time to actually do things. The reason for using AI is also to facilitate the educator's role. Now, when I started, there were 100 people in my course. Now there are 500, and I have to teach 500 people. It's almost impossible for me to be able to help each one person. So the AI is there to help me to basically do a better job. Because as we know from literature, university educators are some of the most stressed people in the business, and we really care about our employees, myself for example, and I don't want to go into a breakdown. And this is why we are trying to find a solution, and this is one of those solutions. So when you do a task, you're going to have feedback straight away from the system. Once again, this is more difficult to create at the beginning, but once it goes into work, then it all falls in automatically. It will be much easier for all of us, which means less stress, less work in preparing things which we need to do anyway. And this is really where it all stops. So we had this problem and we wanted to try and solve it from a design point of view, from a student experience point of view. We looked at the pain points, we found each and every single one of them, and we started finding small fixes for each and every single one of them. And this is what we came out with. It was AI to help us do a better job, AI to help the student to improve his outcomes. And this all falls together into making the university a better place for everybody. Happy people, happy employees, happy students, and more than anything, students who have a really great outcome and they enjoy what they do. I hope that you have liked my intervention, my project, my program. Thank you very much. Goodbye.